In the heart of Africa, tucked between the high peaks of the mountains and the deep, unending woods, there lay a kingdom that was the envy of everyone. The kingdom of Odun was not merely a realm of prosperity, but a place where knowledge and might harmonized under the leadership of its queen, Amara. Her beauty was famous far and wide, but it was her brilliant intelligence and unrelenting bravery that made her revered by her people and dreaded by her foes. Amara was a queen like no other. Her reign was fair, her heart was compassionate, and her judgments were always driven by the love she had for her country. Queen Amara's rule, however, was not without its obstacles. From the very day she gained the throne, there were some who muttered in the shadows, planning against her. They could not bear the strength she personified as a woman in charge, nor could they endure the riches her leadership had brought. Among them was a traitor in her own court, an adviser who had long been in her service. He became jealous of her authority and craved the power she possessed, thinking he could control the kingdom better. It was on one fateful night, beneath a blood-red moon, that the traitor made his move. With a gang of mercenaries in tow, they entered the palace under the cover of darkness. The sound of steel striking against steel rang through the great hallways as the mercenaries assaulted the royal guards. Amara, always prepared, was not one to remain idly in the face of peril. She battled hard, her sword flying through the air as she chopped down her adversaries one by one. But despite her power and talent, she was outnumbered, and treachery came soon. The traitor, whom Amara had trusted beyond all others, attacked her with a poisoned sword. As the poison flowed through her veins, the queen's eyesight dimmed. Her limbs got weary, and with one final stubborn gasp, she slumped to the cold marble floor of her royal chamber. The traitor, thinking her dead, ordered her to be transported away, far from the realm, to be forgotten. When Amara awakened, it was to the sound of foreign voices and the perfume of unusual, untamed plants. She was no longer in her castle or in her country. The warmth of her royal chamber was replaced with the cold, moist ground of a forest. Her head was fuzzy, her memories distant and broken. She could no longer recall who she was. The weight of her crown, the cries of her people, the visage of her beloved kingdom, everything was gone. She just knew one thing with certainty: she was lost. The peasants who discovered her were simple people, living in peace with nature in a calm, remote section of the country. They were oblivious of the kingdom of Odun, of the queen who had governed it, and of the upheaval that had befallen her. They saw just a woman, strange, forlorn, and gorgeous, with a royal demeanor that hinted at something bigger. They took her in without hesitation, gave her food, drink, and shelter. Amara was thankful, but a part of her, deep inside, felt as if she didn't belong here. The villagers, however friendly, regarded her as one of their own, and she helped them with their everyday work. She picked herbs, assisted in the fields, and learnt their customs, but every day something gnawed at her. It was as if the earth itself was beckoning to her, reminding her of a place she could not recall. She started to have dreams. Strange visions of palaces built of gold, of royal courts filled with people bending before her, of a crown lying upon her head. In these dreams, her name was spoken, Queen Amara, but when she awakened, the term seemed like a faraway echo, a part of her that she could not completely understand. Her genuine identity evaded her. The villagers, for their part, named her Amara, because that was the name they had given her upon discovering her. They considered her to be someone important, perhaps a lost traveller, a wanderer who had somehow come to them for protection. Yet, there was always something about her that stood out, something royal in the way she carried herself, in the way she talked, and in the way her eyes surveyed the horizon as if looking for something just beyond her grasp. As the days went, Amara got restless. She felt the weight of something heavy on her heart, a need she couldn't articulate. It was a sensation that came over her in the dead of night, when the hamlet was silent and the moon hung high in the sky. She would sit outdoors, staring into the distant, her head lost in meditation. One evening, while Amara sat alone beneath a big tree, a rustling sound drew her attention. She glanced up to see a man approaching, tall, covered in shadows. The guy walked with a slow, methodical ease, and while she could not make out his face, there was something disquieting about him. He paused just outside the reach of the firelight and peered at her with eyes that seemed to cut into her whole soul. Amara stood up, her senses on alert. She understood, however, that this was no average guy. "Who are you?" she said, her voice calm but forceful. The figure did not respond quickly. Instead, he took a step forward, his form drenched in the faint moonlight. His face was concealed behind the hood of his coat, but the air surrounding him felt filled with an unsaid force. "You do not remember me," the guy murmured in a voice that felt both familiar and unfamiliar. "But you will remember everything." The words sent a shudder down her spine. She took a step back, but the guy reached out with a hand that appeared to sparkle in the darkness. He was no average stranger. "Who are you?" she shouted again, but before he could respond, a tremendous commotion erupted from the trees. It was the sound of men coming, their words gruff and low, their footfall heavy on the earth. The guy peered back toward the source of the disturbance, then turned his focus back to Amara. "You must leave. You are not secure here." With that, he withdrew into the woods, leaving Amara standing alone in the terrible solitude. The following days brought more unusual incidents. More men covered in darkness emerged at the outskirts of the hamlet, observing her, waiting. And with each passing day, the residents got increasingly worried. They started to talk of dire omens, of a queen who had gone, never to be seen again. Amara, still striving to put together the parts of her lost history, could not escape the sensation that her time here was running short. The terrain seemed to speak to her, begging her to return, but to where? To what? The question persisted in her head like a conundrum with no answer. Then, one day, as she walked near the edge of the village, a figure emerged from the trees once again. This time it was not a stranger, but an elder from the village, someone who had been with her since her arrival. "I have seen it," the elder answered gently, his voice shaking. "I have seen the truth." "The truth?" Amara asked, her heart pounding. "What truth?" The elder came closer, dropping his voice. "You are not who you think you are. You are the lost queen, the one who governed a kingdom that is now crumbling to ruin." Amara's heart skipped a beat. Her memories, still scattered like bits of a shattered mirror, started to reappear. The name, the crown, the royal room, all of it came pouring back in a deluge. She was Queen Amara. She had been stolen from her kingdom. She had been forgotten. The elder glanced at her with sorrowful, knowing eyes. "You must return. Your people are in danger. They need you." Amara stood there, astonished by the elder's remarks. Her heart hammered in her chest, and for a second, the world around her appeared to spin. She was the queen, the ruler of a huge realm. But how could this be? How had she forgotten everything? How had she got to this town, distant from her throne and her people? Her mind raced as the memories started to emerge, sluggish and disjointed, like a jigsaw puzzle that was being pieced together, piece by piece. She saw glimpses of her kingdom, the vast palaces of gold, the happy smiles of her people, and the lush plains that extended eternally beneath the African sun. She recalled the warmth of her people's love and adoration, but most of all, she remembered the weight of her obligation, the promise she had made to her forebears to govern wisely and justly. The elder's words pierced through her thoughts. "You must remember, my queen, the kingdom is breaking apart. There are others who desire to steal your position, to grab the throne that properly belongs to you." Amara's palms quiver at his words. She peered into his eyes, attempting to discover the truth in his words. "But how?" she murmured. "How did I end up here? Why have I lost my memory?" The elder groaned profoundly, his face darkened with grief. "It was not an accident, Your Highness. Someone you trusted, betrayed you. They snatched you from your kingdom, poisoned your mind, and wiped your memories. You were left to roam, to forget who you were. But now the moment has arrived for you to restore your position, to preserve your kingdom." Amara's thoughts felt like it was being dragged in all ways. Her memories, albeit vague, were starting to recombine. She recalled her beloved kingdom, the people she had vowed to protect. And she remembered the traitor, the one who had conspired against her. She tightened her hands in wrath. She had been stolen from her people, but the fire of revenge was reigniting in her heart. "I must return," she murmured, her voice firm but filled with resolve. "I must reclaim my kingdom." The elder nodded thoughtfully. "You are not alone in this, my queen. There are still faithful ones who stay in the shadows, waiting for your return. But there are also hazards. The traitor who betrayed you is not the only danger. There are forces from outside your kingdom, mercenaries, warlords, and other enemies who desire to see your rule come to an end. They would stop at nothing to prevent you from the throne." Amara's heart sunk, but she did not waver. Her realm was her life. She could not allow it fall into the hands of people who would destroy it. The elder put a hand on her shoulder. "There is one more thing you must know, my queen. The more you remain away from your kingdom, the more your memories will fade. You must act swiftly because time is running out. If you do not return soon, you may lose all recollection of who you were, of the power you wielded, of the bond you shared with your people." The weight of his words weighed hard on her shoulders. She had to go back. But the trek would not be easy. The path ahead was loaded with unknown perils, and her memories were still delicate, like the wings of a bird that would shatter at the least touch. But deep inside her, a feeling of purpose started to take root. She was Queen Amara. She had been snatched from her throne, but she would return. She would battle for her kingdom. She would retake her crown. "I will return," she stated confidently, staring the senior in the eyes. "But I cannot do this alone. I need help." The elder nodded, as if he had been waiting for her to speak those things. "There are still allies among your people, my queen, those who have not forgotten you. They sit in the shadows, watching and waiting for the day you would return. Seek them out. They will support you on your journey." The following morning, Amara headed off with a small number of the locals who had become her friends and guardians. The elder had handed her a map that went to the far areas where her kingdom resided, far beyond the hills and trees that had encircled her for so long. She examined the map, her fingers following the lines, her thoughts concentrated on the way ahead. It was a risky trek, and they would meet many challenges along the way. The territory between her and her country was terrible, filled with wild creatures, harsh terrain, and individuals who would stop at nothing to prevent her return. But Amara was no stranger to adversity. She has endured innumerable wars as a queen. Her power was not only in her head, but in her heart. She was resolved to retrieve what had been taken from her. As they went, Amara's memories began to trickle back in shards. She recalled her youth, the tales her mother had told her about the ancient kings and queens of their people, and the holy tie between the rulers and the land. She recalled the weight of the crown atop her head, the feel of the royal robes thrown over her shoulders, and the solemn pledge she had given to her people to protect and serve them. Each day, the terrain changed, and the voyage got tougher. The mountains seemed to rise higher, the rivers swifter, and the sun hotter. Amara's body hurt from the long days of travel, but her soul remained unbroken. She was motivated by one goal: to return to her homeland and take back her crown. After several days of travelling, they arrived at the edge of a dense forest, a place where few dared to venture. The air was thick with the scent of moss and earth, and the trees were so tall they seemed to touch the sky. As they stepped into the shadow of the forest, Amara felt a strange sensation wash over her. It seemed as if the forest itself was watching her, waiting. "I don't like this place," one of the villagers muttered, glancing nervously around. Amara halted and peered about, her senses heightened. Something was not right. She could feel it in her bones. Suddenly from the shadows, people emerged, dark and shrouded, with eyes that shined like the moon in the night. Amara's fingers immediately flew to the blade at her side, her muscles tensing. The figures moved closer, their gaze fixated on her. They moved with purpose, as if they had been waiting for her. "You should not have come here, my queen," one of the figures murmured in a low, guttural voice. Amara's heart skipped a beat. She recognized this voice. It seemed familiar, but she could not place it. "Who are you?" she commanded, her voice firm, yet imbued with the power of a queen. The man walked nearer, dropping his cowl to expose his face. It was the face of a man she had once known, one of her most trusted generals. But now his eyes were chilly, his demeanor harsh. "I was once loyal to you," he replied, his voice harsh, "but loyalty is a currency I can no longer afford." "Why are you here?" Amara inquired, her heart heavy with disbelief. "We are here to ensure you do not reach the kingdom," he said. "You are no longer the queen. Your dominion is over." Amara was stunned, her mind straining to accept the treachery she was experiencing. The man before her, once a trusted general who had fought by her side in conflicts, now stood before her as a phantom of the past. His words pierced through the air like a razor. "You were once my queen," he continued, his voice tinged with hatred, "but your reign has faded. There are others who believe in a new leader, one who is not constrained by the past. Your kingdom does not require a queen who has lost her own strength." Amara's heart wrenched at his words. How had it come to this? How had one of her most faithful subordinates turned on her? She had trusted him with her life, and now he stood before her, determined on keeping her from returning to the kingdom that was rightly hers. "Why?" she muttered, her voice laced with grief and astonishment. "Why would you betray me?" The general's eyes flared with wrath. "Because you are weak. You allowed yourself to be plucked from your throne. You let your enemy win. And today you are nothing more than a shadow of your previous self." Amara's grip tightened on her blade, her mind racing. She could feel the ancient warrior spirit within her waking. This guy, this traitor, did not realize who he was dealing with. She was the queen of a magnificent empire. She has fought down opponents far fiercer than him. She would not be beaten by the likes of him. "You may have turned against me," she replied, her voice firm but filled with determination. "But I am still the queen, and I shall take back what is mine." The general laughed angrily. "You think you can reclaim the throne with a dagger and a handful of villagers? You are nothing without your folks and your people. They have forgotten you." Amara's heart wrenched at his words, but she refused to let them shatter her. She knew she could not overcome him alone, not here in the jungle where danger waited at every turn. She had to think carefully, to outwit him. She looked at her companions, each of them appearing just as determined as she felt. They were terrified, yeah, but they were loyal. They would follow her, no matter the odds. With a deep breath, Amara switched her sight back to the general. "I may have lost my memory, but I have not lost my resolve. If I must battle you to return to my realm, then so be it. I will not be stopped." The general's expression hardened. "You are foolish, Amara. You do not realize the forces you are up against. But if you continue on taking this road, I will not hesitate to make sure you never achieve the throne again." He gestured to his comrades, and the shadows surrounding them appeared to come alive. More individuals appeared from the darkness, clothed in black and moving with an uncanny quiet. Amara's heart sped as she recognized the enormity of the situation. These were not ordinary folks, they were mercenaries, trained murderers who had been recruited to stop her. But Amara was not scared. She had been taught in the arts of warfare from an early age. Her realm had not made her queen because of her pedigree alone. She had won her crown with strength, knowledge, and leadership. She would not be influenced by fear, nor would she be cowed by the traitor who had once served her. With a fast move, she unsheathed her dagger, the blade gleaming in the low light of the woodland. "Then come," she urged, her voice low and forceful. "Let's see if you have what it takes to stop me." The mercenaries pushed forward, but Amara was quicker. She moved with the elegance of a lioness, her sword flying through the air as she evaded and parried their assaults. Her body acted on instinct, her mind concentrated only on one goal: defeat them and continue her mission. The treacherous general stepped back, watching with icy eyes as Amara struggled. She could feel his surprise at her talent, at her ability to continue battle even after losing so much. But Amara understood that this war was merely the beginning. This conflict in the wilderness was nothing compared to the hardships she would encounter when she eventually returned to her realm. She had no illusions about the journey ahead. The mercenaries, albeit competent, were no match for her. One by one, they fell, their weapons clattering to the ground as Amara's blade struck with accuracy and strength. The general's face contorted in wrath as he came forward, drawing his own sword. "You may be a queen," he snarled, "but you are no match for me." Amara caught his stare, her heart calm despite the desire that flared inside her. "We'll see about that." The clatter of metal filled the air as Amara and the general engaged in fight. His attacks were swift and nasty, but Amara's movements were seamless, her training and instincts guiding her. She could feel the weight of the struggle pushing on her, but she refused to let it overwhelm her. She was battling not only for herself, but for her realm, for her people. The jungle appeared to slip away as the two warriors engaged in a lethal dance. The sound of their swords striking was the only thing that mattered. With each hit, Amara felt more linked to the queen she had been, to the power that surged through her veins. She was not the same lady who had lost her identity. She was a queen, a warrior, and nothing could take that from her. Finally, with a sudden movement, Amara disarmed the general, sending his sword flying from his grasp. She stood above him, her blade pushed to his neck. "It's over," she replied calmly, her breath steady. "You've lost." The general gazed up at her, but there was no defiance in his eyes now, only dread. "You may have won this battle, Amara, but the war is far from over. Your kingdom is collapsing. The traitors are already in control. There is nothing you can do to stop it." Amara's grip on her blade tightened. "I will stop it. I will take back my kingdom, no matter what it takes." With that, she turned and gestured to her friends. The mercenaries who had assaulted them were either dead or unconscious, and the general was left lying on the ground, his dignity broken. But Amara knew this triumph was short. The main war, the one for her empire, was yet ahead. As they resumed their trek, Amara's mind raced with ideas of her homecoming. The traitor's words lingered in her ears, but she refused to let them affect her. She had a country to regain, a throne to take back, and a people to defend. She was no longer a forgotten queen. She was Amara, the monarch of a huge land, and no one would take it from her. The quest to retake her country was lengthy, and the struggles that remained ahead were far from done. But Amara's determination had never been greater. Every step she made, every fight she fought, drew her closer to her people, to the throne that was rightly hers. She had learned much since her days as the forgotten queen. Her strength, her intelligence, and her bravery had all been tried, and each challenge had only made her more resolute. As she and her small company of faithful peasants reached the boundaries of her kingdom, Amara's pulse quickened. The enormous region she had once commanded loomed ahead, but it was no longer the same. The kingdom was shattered, its people divided, and the enemies who had plotted against her were now in power. She had to act swiftly before the final relics of her rule were gone. They arrived at the boundaries of the kingdom's capital under the cover of darkness, the old walls of the city rising like a silent sentinel. The gates were highly guarded, but Amara was not scared. She had battled too long and too hard to be stopped by trivial hurdles. "We need to get inside," she continued, her voice quiet but filled with authority. "We cannot waste time." One of the locals, a great archer called Jala, nodded. "Leave it to us, my queen. We will find a way in." Amara watched as Jala and the others swiftly started to work. They moved with the accuracy of men who had fought in many wars. Their efforts were not in vain. Within seconds, they located a concealed tunnel that went within the walls of the city. They slipped through the black streets, sneaking discreetly past guards and patrols. As they reached the royal palace, Amara's heart beat in her chest. The palace, once a sight of tremendous beauty and vitality, now lay in darkness, its formerly brilliant flags replaced with the emblems of her foes. The traitors who had taken her throne were within, their power growing greater by the day. But Amara had no intention of allowing them to retain what was hers. She was ready to meet them head on. With the support of her devoted gang, Amara approached the royal grounds under the cover of darkness. They made their way to the royal chamber, where the new rulers of the realm were celebrating their win. Amara's breath seized in her throat as she heard their voices, loud and rowdy, mocking her absence. "They think they've won," Amara whispered, her voice filled with silent rage. "But they have no idea who they are dealing with." The doors of the throne chamber were enormous and intimidating, but Amara felt no dread as she pulled them open. The instant the doors opened wide, the room became quiet. The once celebratory ambience was replaced with an unpleasant anxiety. The usurpers, the traitors, looked up, their features contorted with astonishment and uncertainty. They had not expected her to return. At the middle of the chamber, the chief traitor, a man called Barik, sat on her throne, his hands resting on its golden armrests. His eyes opened when he spotted her, but there was no indication of recognition in them. "You—" Barik's voice was laced with incredulity. "You should not have come back." Amara's eyes locked with his, her gaze uncompromising. "I came back because this kingdom is mine. This throne is mine, and I will not allow you to steal it." She went forward, her footsteps booming in the great hall. Her blade was in her hand, and her heart was intent on recovering her land. She was not the same queen who had walked the hamlet, lost and forgotten. She was Queen Amara, and she had returned to restore order. Barik stood from the throne, his face flushed with rage. "You are a ghost of your former self," he hissed. "You have no power here anymore. The people have picked me. I am their king now." Amara's lips twisted into a chilly grin. "The people have not chosen you. They have been duped. I am their queen, and they will remember." With a rapid move, Amara launched her blade, sending it directly into Barik's chest. He gasped, his eyes wide in shock as he staggered back, clutching the wound. The room burst into turmoil, but Amara's attention never wavered. The traitors who had betrayed her tried to fight back, but they were no match for her power, her training, and the fire that blazed inside her. One by one, they fell. As the last of her adversaries lay beaten on the floor, Amara rose erect, breathing hard but triumphant. The throne chamber, once a symbol of treachery, was now a site of atonement. She had taken back what was hers. The stillness that followed was deafening, and for a minute Amara closed her eyes, allowing the weight of the event sink over her. She could sense her people, her ancestors, surrounding her, their spirits cheering at her homecoming. She had come full circle. She was no longer the forgotten queen. She was Amara, the legitimate queen of her realm. The doors to the throne chamber opened, and one by one her people started to trickle in. Their eyes were filled with amazement and astonishment, denial slowly turning into realization. They had assumed she was gone forever, but suddenly here she was, alive, powerful, and triumphant. Amara strode up to the throne, her heart bursting with pride. She could feel the weight of her crown, not as a burden, but as a sign of her people's confidence and faith in her. She would not fail them again. As she sat on the throne, the room erupted with shouts and screams of excitement. Her folks had not forgotten her. They had never fully lost faith, and now they were together one again under her authority. "I am home," Amara said to herself, a grin bursting over her face, "and this kingdom will prosper again.